Hello everyone. I'm here today to talk to you about some of the powerhouses of magic. The powerhouses I'm referring to are the elements. You learn to work with the elements, first of all, probably within a circle when you're calling in the directions. Each direction is represented by an element, and the elements I'm speaking of are water, fire, earth, and air. Not necessarily in that order, but those are the four main powerhouses and the main elements of magic. So the elements are actually the four creative energies of the universe as well. And each of the elements are necessary for human life. And they both have, or each element has both positive and negative aspects to it. And today I'm just going to do a brief introduction to the elements, and then I'm hoping to do a few other videos specifically for each element. But today I'm just going to kind of go over the elements, what the aspects of the elements are, what associations they have. So I have some notes here that I'll be referring to because I could think of it off the top of my head, but I wrote it all down and I want to make sure I get it all right for you guys. So they kind of like balance each other out too and work really well in harmony, sort of like, the water needs to keep the earth moist so it's fertile, and the water helps to control the fire. The earth needs the fire to keep it warm. Not only we have a fire element right in the center of our earth in the lava form that keeps everything kind of going, and then of course the air feeds fire, and everything sort of plays into each other in helping to keep each other under control, but also to rev things up. Like I said, like how air feeds fire. And without these four elements, our planet wouldn't exist. So, all the elements as well come from sort of a fifth element, often referred to as Akasha. You may have heard of the Akashic records. Well, Akasha is sort of this source of all energy. I'm going to talk a little bit about that fifth element at the end, but first we're going to look at the four main elements. So Earth is sort of the first one, and Earth is our mother. Mother Earth, right? She's fertile, she's nurturing. She, again, they have not good and bad aspects, but like mothers, they have their soft side, the dark, rich soil that feels warm on our hands when we're playing in it in the garden. She can also be as dry as sand, and as rough as rocks and that sort of thing. So she has many aspects to her as well. Her stones are actually her wisdom keepers. So they're kind of like her memory, which I think is always cool. When I do a crystal class, I often remind people, don't forget about the stones. I mean, I know the crystals are pretty, and the crystals do have knowledge within them as well, but the stones really are the wisdom keepers. They've been around since the beginning of time. They've seen stuff that nothing else on this planet can say they've witnessed. So Earth also, the element, represents the densest and the most stable of all the elements. So that's why it's such a good grounding element. And I'm going to talk about what you can do with the Earth element, because in your magic practice or your practice of magic, you're going to sort of call in certain elements. You might do one element, you might do a combination of elements, that sort of thing. So it's always good to know what magic you can work with this particular element and what it's strong for. So grounding, any kind of grounding is really good to call in earth element, obviously. On the earth, we raise our food, we do our living, we walk on her, we lie on her, we roll down a grassy hill. We also come back to her when we die. We bury our dead in Mother Earth, in one form or another. We simply couldn't have this human experience without our Mother Earth. And the earth actually is a manifestation of earth energy, if you kind of get where I'm going there. And with earth energy also exists within ourselves. And we've heard that many times if we've attended funerals, from dust to dust, ash to ash, we return back to the earth kind of thing. So earth energy is also within the universe at large. Gravity is also a manifestation of this element because it's gravity that keeps us on this planet. Otherwise, we'd just float off. So some of the aspects of the earth element, the type of energy it is receptive. So when you're drawing things in, when you're being receptive with your energy, that's when you kind of want to call in some of that earth energy, perhaps. The color of earth energy, green, because of course you think of green Mother Earth, green power, that sort of thing. But sometimes it can also be brown. It's most of the time green, because green represents all the living things, the plants, the leaves on the trees, the green grasses, the green plants, that sort of thing. But brown also can be representative of Mother Earth because her soil is often brown and the sand is brown, and so underneath those plants and the barks on the tree are often brown, that sort of thing. So then we have the kinds of rituals that are good to call in that element of earth. So earth, it does represent the planet, but it also represents our material goods. It's very good for employment and money kind of spells. It's also great for prosperity spells, very good for fertility spells. If you want stability in any way, whether it's financial stability or emotional stability, because again, it's the densest and most grounding kind of energy you can get. So if you're doing any kind of stability, you want to bring stability into your life, then call on the earth energy. Selling or finding a home is another good time to bring earth energy in, because of course, in order to live on the earth, we need some form of shelter. And these days we live in homes. We've moved away from the caves and and things like that. So, although there are probably a couple of people that still live in caves, but that's a different kind of lifestyle. Then we've got ritual forms. So that means what kind of ritual you're doing when you work with earth energy. So if you're burying anything, because there's a lot of spells that ask you to bury stuff, know that you're calling in that earth energy. You're actually literally digging up the earth and putting something in there. So you're using some earth energy when you're burying things. When you're planting things, you can do a lot of earth magic when you're doing your garden. Just be mindful of it, that you're working with that energy and that magic kind of thing. When you're making images in soil or sand, or if you're making anything out of clay, like making images meaning drawing in soil or sand. I've done that with spells that I've done outside, and you do different symbols out on the earth or on the ground kind of thing. But also too, if you're making any kind of clay item, I've got a pentacle that I did in clay. When you're working with that for my altar, I did it. And when you're working with that kind of energy, you're working with earth energy. So be aware of that. So some of the herbs and plants and things that are associated with earth energy, anything that's sort of woodsy smelling, of course, like patchouli and mosses and lichens and roots of any kind, lichens I meant to say there, roots of any kind, nuts, as well. Any kind of what I call the homey heavy spices. So your cinnamon, your nutmeg, cloves, any kind of those kind of spices. Oftentimes, sorry, my dog's making a mess over here. He's rearranging blankets. He likes to make nests beside me while I do these videos. So right now he's arranging a blanket. So like I said, getting back to those spices, like you use cinnamon and nutmeg a lot and cloves and things like that when you're doing prosperity spells or money spells. So you're drawing in that earth energy because those are spices that are associated with the earth. Some of the stones or crystals that are associated with earth energy are plain old stones. Easiest thing to get, just plain old stones. Go outside, you'll find some stones somewhere. It doesn't matter the size. And if you want to represent earth on your altar, you can do it in the form of just a plain old stone. But if you want other kinds of things, coal is another one that is very earth-based. Emeralds, because of the green. jade as well, and jade is known to be lucky for money and things like that, right? And then the metals that are associated with earth are iron and lead, two of the heavier kind of metals, because again, earth is that dense energy. The musical instrument that's associated with earth energy is the drum, because it's very grounding. It's a heavier instrument, also only kind of percussion instruments in general, but definitely the drum, hand drum, drum sets, however you want to play the drums. And then there's creatures that are associated with earth energy. So dogs are earth energy based, and I can totally see that. I have two dogs, and they're very grounded, and they're very unconditional in their love, and they're very forgiving and that sort of thing. Horses as well. Horses are really like big dogs with long legs. So I can see why horses are associated with earth. Cows also are associated with earth energy, partly because historically speaking, for a long, long time we were agriculturally based, and we still are, but definitely it was a way of living that was more predominant. And cows, once you had a cow, you were sort of considered set. You know, you had your milk, you had meat if you needed it, that sort of thing. You were considered a prosperous farmer if you had a cow, a family cow. So then there's also the earthworm. It actually literally has earth in its name. So of course it's associated with earth energy. Ants as well, because they make their homes, very complicated homes, in the earth. And then any kind of burrowing animals like gophers and groundhogs and things like that are earth energy animals. So if you're looking to have a spirit guide or do a spiritual quest of any kind, sorry, that was really hard to get out. You can, you know, I know it seems silly for some people, like call on the groundhog as your spiritual animal for that quest. You can do that, and the groundhog will be there. And surprisingly enough, the best messages come from the weirdest animals. Because people always want to pick, you know, the eagles and the foxes and the wolves, the cool animals, right? But sometimes you get a groundhog, and he has the biggest piece of wisdom you could learn. Now, I've also included in creatures some of the sort of more mythical creatures. So I've got gnomes and dwarves. I'm a fairyologist, a certified fairyologist. So that means I'm also a fairy tale historian. So that means I know a lot about these kind of magical, mythical creatures. So, I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that know more than I do, but I know my fair share. So gnomes and dwarves, because of course they live in the earth. The dwarves are known for their mining and that sort of thing. Golems are sometimes associated with this. Golems, though, are characters made of mud, so that's why they're kind of in with the earth energy creatures. Earth dragons, there are earth dragons, and usually the earth dragons, I might do actually a video just based on dragons, because there's a lot of different dragons, and you know, people say they love dragons, and that's awesome. I love dragons too. I'm totally fascinated with dragons, so I get that love. But not a lot of people know that there's all kinds of different dragons. So I'm going to go through some of the different dragons here in this video, but I might actually do a separate video just on dragons. So give me a thumbs up if you'd like, or comment if you would like to see a separate video on dragons, and I can do that up as well. So the earth dragons are often the ones that we think of when we think of dragons, because they're usually the ones, and almost every dragon is fire breathing in some way. So there are fire dragons as well, and we're going to mention those later. But the earth ones are often the ones guarding the gold or the hoard of treasure, because they're usually in some kind of cave or buried within the earth, a pocket of the earth where there's gold and stuff like that. So they are often the ones that are guarding the treasure, because that's what dragons are known for. So the season that's associated with earth is winter, because it's a time of darkness, and earth is very much a dark energy. And I don't mean dark as in evil, I mean dark as there's light and dark magic, and dark magic is different from black magic. That's a totally different thing. Dark magic is about growth, about beginnings, because we need to, like every seed on the planet, we need to plant that seed in darkness in the earth so that it can sort of begin to sprout and generate itself into a full plant. But it needs to start in darkness in the earth. So that's why earth energy is associated with winter, which is a time of rest. Because when you first plant that seed, you kind of need to step away and then come back to it. So you plant it in the darkness of the and the warmth of Mother Earth. You step away and let it rest so that it can create that energy to explode into blossom. So the direction that's associated with Earth is north. So we've got season as winter and north as the direction, because north on the Earth is the greatest place of darkness. Not only does it not get much sunlight when it does get sunlight, but it has the very northern parts have only 6 months of sunlight, and then they're in darkness for the other 6 months. And I'm talking darkness like nighttime. So the time of the earth energy is night. So just think dark with earth, because you planted that seed. And again, dark is about growth, about new beginnings, about resting to get ready for that next level in life. It's not black magic, it's dark magic. Two different things. So then the magical tool that's associated when you have your altar and stuff, the magical tool that's associated with earth energy is the pentacle. So it's a wooden, metal, or clay disc, usually speaking. I did a class where we did clay discs, just that DAS brick that you can buy, and we made our own little pentacles with the DAS. And I said, traditionally speaking, a lot of pentacles were actually made with clay, because during burning times they could easily kind of destroy it, and then there'd be no proof that they were working with magic, kind of thing. So it's a pentacle, so it's a wooden, metal, or clay disc that's inscribed with the 5-pointed star, in case you didn't know what that was. The entry point for the goddess, the pentacle is the entry point for the goddess. So oftentimes your pentacle is in your north part of your altar or in the center. Those are the two main parts where it is, and that it is seen as the entry point for the goddess. So the point in life for the earth energy is actually advanced age, so the crone stage, because the earth is full of wisdom. Like I said, the stones are her wisdom keepers. So by having a few stones in your northern part of your altar, you have a couple of wisdom keepers sitting right there for you. And like I said, the crone stage is kind of the point in life for representing that earth energy. So it's calling upon the crone wisdom. And crone is a very honorable title, especially in the magical witchcraft Wiccan world. To be a crone is a beautiful thing. Some people kind of see crone as an insult. To me, I'm in my crone stage now. So I'm a grandmother, and especially once you kind of hit over 50 and are a grandmother, or over 50 kind of thing, not always a grandmother of literal, like I had children and then my children's had children kind of thing. But that's sort of some indicators of being in that crone stage kind of thing. Also, going through menopause is another good indicator of being in your crone stage. So honor that about yourself. Getting older is a good thing. I know society at large is like, oh, fight, getting older, age with grace, and, try and look young forever. And it's like, no, embrace it, because it's part of the beauty of being here on earth, and part of the beauty of having this whole human experience, and be thankful for it, because not everyone is able to reach their crone stage. As I'm sure all of us know, we've all known someone who died too young, kind of thing. So astrological signs that are associated with the earth energy. So these are all earth-based astrological signs. If you are one of them, you'll know who you are. So it's Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And what's kind of funny is this is advanced age, point of life. Crone stage is the association. And you'll find that Tauruses, Virgos, and Capricorns are kind of old souls for the most part. They act older than they really are. They kind of come out of the womb ready to be old, that sort of thing. And it's sort of in the order that they come. So Taurus is the youngest of the earth signs. So Tauruses don't always act like, old right out of the gate, nor do Virgos, but they do have this sort of wisdom about them a lot of the times. And again, they tend to be old souls. Tauruses and Virgos are very stable. They're very steady. They tend to be the rocks in people's lives. Capricorns are definitely, they say Capricorns come out of the womb old and then they grow into being younger people. They're kind of got the Benjamin Button thing going on. But yeah, they are old right out of the gate, and they talk and act like old people a lot of the times. And they're very stable because they are the goat, so they're able to climb like these itty bitty little ledges. So you'll find that Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, because they are very steady, they're earth-based signs, and they tend to be old souls as well, or have that sense of old souls. So the sense that's actually related to earth energy is touch, because of course we touch things. It's a very tactile energy, right? The symbols, the natural symbols of, and I'm going to go through the symbols that you can look at as well, like that you can write out, I mean. So the natural symbols are salt for earth, and a clay dish or a container of soil, sand, or rocks. And sheaves of wheat are also a symbol of earth energy. Acorns and spices in general, but I named some specific spices that you can use for earth energy. So if you are drawing in earth energy and you're inscribing candles when you're blessing and anointing them, or if you want to, sometimes you'll see it show up in old texts because they've written sort of in code a little bit, or if you're writing your own spells and you want to use the energy symbol for earth, there are a few of them. So there's the upside down triangle with the line across. That's earth energy. Or earth symbol. The other earth symbol is just simply a square because it's about stability, right? So it's your 4 pillars, your square of foundation, the stability of the square. It's not going anywhere. And then of course we have this earth symbol, which is representative, the circles the earth, and then this is the equator, and this is the main meridian line. So it represents those lines. This is also a great way to slice pie. Start with the quarters and then slice them again. And you have 8 even pieces of pie. Because I've seen where pies have been butchered. Because people are like, I want a big piece, I want a little piece, just a little sliver, la la la. No, you're all getting an equal piece. And I got 8 of them here. And also, you know how many you get out of a pie is 8 pieces, right? Pizza people do it all the time. That's how they slice the pizzas as well. So just a little tip there. Yeah, so then also too, types of magic that are ruled by earth energy. So gardening magic, any kind of magnetic magic that you use, image magic. So whether you're using a photograph, whether you're drawing an image, whether what was I going to say? Oh, you're using puppets or things like that. That tends to be earth based energy. Any stone or crystal magic, of course, is earth-based magic. Tree magic is also earth-based. Knot magic, where you're tying knots and you're doing ladders and things like that. And any kind of binding magic, because of course the earth is the densest of all the energies that you're going to be working with, so it is the most binding. So any kind of binding magic. And that's why blood magic also is earth-based magic, because we are earth-based creatures, so our blood. You're also working with other magic there, but blood is often you're calling in, especially if it's a binding kind of blood bond or something. That is when you're using earth magic, and it's very, very binding. Then we get into air. So air is a lot lighter than earth, obviously. And the old saying is you can go 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So air is definitely the one we need to have, because we can't go very long without it, and we would die without air. So air is the power of movement. Think of that, because air is often wind and things like that too, right? So I often will say, when I'm talking about the elements, sometimes I'll mention wind instead of air because I think of wind, right? But air is also intelligence, and as we learn, we move and shift with the winds of wisdom that we learn. It's invisible, and yet it can be measured. It's a very real mixture of gases that we breathe in, right? And it needs to be a certain mixture of those gases, and that's why people get worried about our clean air and whatnot, because it will affect us if we're not breathing the right kind of air. In magical terms, though, air is the element of the mind and the power of thought. It's the force of intellect. So it can be a very powerful thing. Like, I'm sure you've heard time and time again, it's the power of your thoughts that create your reality. It's the power of your thoughts that create the words that you say. It's the power of the thought and then the words that you say that create and manifest in your reality. So they always say, you know, if you're not liking where you are, change your thoughts to change your life. And this is all air energy. So if you're wanting to do sort of a changing of your life, or bringing in other things, manifesting a new reality into your life, then you want to work with that air energy, because that's all in that area, is the mind, the thought, your words, because you need air to speak, right? It's carried out through the airwaves, the vibrations of those words, and they need to fall in line with what you want in your reality. And when you learn to own that, when you learn to own that everything in your life is here because you brought it here, good, bad, awe-inspiring, tragic, everything is here because you were on that wavelength for it to be here. And when you really learn to own that, because a lot of people want to back away from that because they're like, well, I've had so much tragedy, and you know, it's not my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just saying you attracted that into your life. And when you really learn to own that and get above the ego of, it's my fault, it's not your fault. So that's ego getting in the way, you know, because people, again, like I say, back away from that. I did that too, because I was like, but I've had things that I can't control come into my life. Nevertheless, you brought them, you attracted them. And when you own that, you really have a lot of power. That changed my life when I learned to own that, because I started looking around and going, okay, so this is here because I brought it in, and this is here because I brought it in. Because what it does is, and if you're in the right place, it'll shift you, because it means then, well, this doesn't have to be here if I don't want it to be here, and I can start to bring in the things that I do want. And now you're living in a controlled life as opposed to a reactive life. That means a lot of drama is going to go away too. So those of you that are addicted to drama, you brought all of that in. So learn to own that, and you can keep it or take it away, whatever you want to do. So it's a very powerful thing to learn to own that. And working with the air element, you do start to shift into that space of understanding how things come and go from your life. It's a very, very powerful kind of element to work with. And it's also a very mysterious element to work with. Because, of course, like, you can't grab handfuls of air, and we still don't fully understand how the mind works. We just know it's the most powerful computer on the planet. Each of us have the most powerful computer on the planet in our own heads. So that's a big thing. And sound, of course, when we're speaking, we need air, and that creates sound. We also create sound through our musical expressions and things like that. And with that, that's a manifestation of the element is sound. So by making the sounds, the words like I'm going to win the lottery, or I'm going to have a new car, or I'm going to be more spiritually aware, or I'm going to have balance in my life. All these things, the way you say them, what you're saying, now you're attracting those things based on what you're saying. So be very aware of what you're saying, because sound is the manifestation of the air element. You're working with the air element. All of us are doing it all the time. We're just not always aware. And when you're working with magic and your practice of magic, having more awareness around this element and realizing what you're saying, both to yourself, to your people around you, if you have clients, to your clients, things like that, your co-workers, your boss, your spouse, your kids, all has power in what you say. So become more aware of that, and you'll have more control over your own life. And you'll find that the reaction of other people don't affect you as much. So some of the aspects of this air element, it's the type of energy, it's projective, because we project out our voice. When we're playing music, we project it out. Our thoughts come out in the form of words. The color is yellow, which is the color of the sun, and also the sky at dawn. The types of rituals that you tend to do that employ the air element are travel, any kind of travel spells, education, study, knowledge, all of that is all under the air element's domain. Freedom, whatever you term that to be, freedom. And recovering lost items. I also say a prayer to Saint Anthony is also a good thing to say when you're trying to recover lost items. He tends to help us out a lot for that. You're working with the air element in ritual form when you're tossing items in the air. And that, I know that sounds funny, because I was telling a friend, she's like, what, you just threw things in the air? And it's like, well, we're not juggling, no. But, sometimes there's spells that require you to toss something behind you into a crossroads. Sometimes there are times when we're tossing out a balloon or a feather, for instance, and seeing how it comes back down to the ground, which direction it goes. Sometimes we're tossing things into moving water. There's lots of tossing of items in different spells. So now when you read spells and you see any of this where there is a potential tossing of an item, you're calling in that earth energy, that air energy. And you're going to need the air element within that spell. So when you cast your circle, you'll pay attention to that element coming in. Also fanning, and I mean literal fanning. So a fanning things. So you can fan a flame, you can fan an idea, sometimes you can fan yourself if you get really hot in the circle. My circles tend to get very hot. I'm very much a fire person, and I have a lot of fire energy, and so when I do a circle, a lot of people notice that the room gets very warm, and I'm really working up, churning up a lot of energy. So it tends to get very warm. Even if I'm by myself in the circle, people have walked into a room after I've done a spell and went, holy crap, it's warm in here. And I burn, I burn hot all the time. So naturally speaking, so when I'm doing magical work, definitely I bring in a lot of fire element, just because I'm naturally there anyways, regardless of the kind of spell I'm doing. Visualization, any kind of visualization, back to the air element. You're working with air, and positive thinking as well. So if you want to change your thoughts, work with the air element and bring in that air energy, and it will help to change your mindset if that's something you want to do. Now, some of the herbs that you work with the air are fragrant flowers. So very smelly ones, and I don't mean smelly as in bad smelly, I mean very fragrant ones like lilacs or roses, things that you smell and you go, oh yeah, okay, that, I know that smell kind of thing. Not your lighter scented flowers. You need heavy scented flowers. That's an air element kind of thing. Leaves in general, because air loves to play with leaves, right? So you can bring in any kind of leaves. Um, uh, I I say the herbs are sort of the pungent herbs like dill, sage, thyme, oregano, rosemary. Those are air element kind of herbs if you want to use any herbs in your spells or whatever. Stones. So the stones and crystals are more like light stones, like pumice. Like, I mean light as in weight, not light as in light. I mean, sure, you can use light ones too, like that are light in color. But pumice definitely is an air type stone, because the air stones don't really mix, right? So the ones that pumice has a lot of air holes, so that's a good one. Transparent stones like mica, that flakes off. In our schoolyard, I remember in grade school, there was a big mica rock in the playground, and we all loved to kind of just chip away at this mica because it would just flake off. And of course, diamonds. Air is, about intelligence and higher intelligence. So of course it loves diamonds, because it's a clear stone, right? So diamonds are air's best friend. Metal, we've got tin and copper as the metals because they're lighter metals, right? Musical instruments. Now, air loves any kind of music because, of course, music is air moving around, right? But the flute, the clarinet, any kind of wind or reed instruments, the recorder, that sort of thing, the little wooden whistles that you can play, that's very much air energy kind of music. Chimes as well are air, but chimes also come in with water, I think, too. So if you're working with those two elements, definitely chimes are a great thing. The creatures that are associated with air are dragonflies, butterflies, any kind of winged instrument, insect, I mean. Yeah, butterflies, dragonflies, those kind of things, right, are very much air based. Also, butterflies definitely are about transformation. They go from the caterpillar to the butterfly. So that's definitely an air creature, because air is all about transformation in the intellectual way. Fire is also about transformation in a different kind of way, and we're going to talk about that in 2 seconds. Most birds are also associated with the air element. So those are some spirit guides you can call upon. If you're looking at more mythical creatures, we're looking at fairies, of course, unicorns, the Pegasus, which is the horse with the wings, that was born of when Medusa died, and air dragons. And yes, there are special air dragons. The season associated with air is spring, because it's the time of freshness, new beginnings, winds of change kind of come in spring, that sort of thing. The direction is east, because it's the place of the sunrise. Again, it's new beginnings, a new day dawns. The winds of change come from the east. Most weather comes from the west, but oddly enough, sometimes it comes from the east. And when things come from the east, a lot of times the energy around us, we suddenly want to start new things, or new things are beginning. So always look to see which direction the wind is blowing. Time is dawn, so early morning. Or if you're doing an air element spell that specifically draws in a lot of air energy, I suggest you do that spell early morning, dawn or after, but before 11 a.m. There are some novenas and spells that do require you do it before 11 a.m. is kind of the cutoff, the absolute last cutoff, because even at 11 we're kind of getting a little into the morning and only have an hour left before lunch kind of thing. So I always use that as a rule of thumb. Magical tool is the wand. So I find this kind of interesting that the wand is associated with air. I get that because you're moving energy around. Air is a projective energy, and the wand itself is a receptor. It's a receptive energy with the wand. So it's kind of interesting that the wand is an air element tool. However, perhaps I find they balance each other out, because air's symbol is the sun, like the color is the color of the sun, very male based. but has that wand as the female. It's sort of a bit of its yin to its yang kind of thing to help keep it balanced out. And spring is often seen as kind of a feminine type of season, so I find that very interesting. So point of life is infancy or newborn. So the astrological signs, because remember I said the earth ones are, they kind of are old souls. So infancy and newborn, these astrological signs are not the young of the zodiac world or the astrology world. We've got Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So what's interesting about them in regards to this point of life, because everything also kind of connects, right? So the Geminis, Libras, and the Aquarians of the zodiac world tend to be forever curious, just like newborns are, right? So they're not necessarily young souls. That's not what I'm saying. They're not young souls. They don't have that... they're not necessarily going to stay young looking all the time, that sort of thing. That's a different kind of energy. The Geminis, Libras, and Aquarians do have that insatiable curiosity, though. They'll often ask questions. They like to be content like babies do. And like I said, they're willing to explore their world, and they do have a great curiosity that never seems to fade. So that's interesting. And senses for the air element are hearing. I wanted to say healing, but hearing and smell, because those are both air-based. Smell is one of the most suggestive and powerful senses we have. And then hearing, of course, too, because we can't hear without air being moved around. The natural symbols of air are feathers, incense, smoke, or any kind of sage smoke if you're saging and smudging and things like that, and fragrant flowers. The types of magic that are sort of ruled by air are any kind of divination. So if you're using pendulums or tarot cards, or if you're doing the I Ching, what else uses divination? Crystal balls, things like that. That's all divination. That's all air element, so be mindful of that maybe, if you need some extra air elements coming in. I often use bells to cleanse after I do a tarot reading, and I find it just kind of, or a singing bowl. I love my singing bowl, and I use it a lot to cleanse, and I can really get my singing bowl going. I love it. Concentration is also ruled by magic. Visualization and wind magic, of course, is ruled by the air. Now into the fire. So the fire element is an interesting element. I'm very familiar with it because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very fire-based. I run hot all the time. So I almost always incorporate fire into any kind of magic I do, sometimes to my benefit, sometimes to to not my benefit. And I'm an Aries, so of course that's the first fire sign of the zodiac. So the fire is an interesting one because it's the only one that actually needs to be fed in order to be here, right? Fire is a creator and a destroyer. And like I said, it's also a transformational thing. Air is transformation, but in a different way. Fire is transformation very much in the way of it burns away the crap we don't need in our lives, in our souls, in our minds. It can seem very aggressive and very, oh my God, kind of moments, because air will just gently take things away. Fire just goes nope, and burns it away. And sometimes it hurts to burn things away. So air can be very aggressive sometimes. And of course, fire, the fires of passion and things like that. We use fire as an analogy a lot when we're thinking of things that we love and that we want to do, and that's, what's our sole purpose and that sort of thing. But she cannot exist in physical form, and I do call her a she, even though it's a male-based energy. But she sort of comes alive when she's burning, right? She becomes like a living being when she's in flame form, but she needs to be fed the whole time that you're working with her. And that's the thing about fire, right? But fire transforms objects, ourselves, our situations, whatever it might be. And fire must always be controlled. When I'm teaching candle magic in my classes, I'm always, the first thing I go over is, first you need to honor the fire energy. You need to be respectful and mindful because of all the energies. Like, yes, air can get out of control and so can water, but they're on a huge scale. Like when air gets out of control, we're talking tornadoes and windstorms and things. When water gets out of control, then we're talking about tsunamis and things like that. So that's like, you can't control that, right? That's nature. But fire is a kind of a different thing, in that we need it to live, right? Because it was the gift that was given to man, fire. Once we had fire, and we thought it was very magical, of course, because the only way we first got fire was, we thought it came from the wood, right? Because the lightning would strike a tree and then there would be fire within that tree, and it's like, oh, the fire's been brought out by the lightning. That was often the belief of early man, that the fire is within the tree and it's the strike of the lightning that brings that fire out. And when we were nomads and traveling around, there was the fire keeper, and the fire keeper would have to take a hot ember, not in their hands obviously, but in a container, and their only job was to keep that ember alive, because to find fire before we figured out how to make fire was very important. It was their job was, the tribe's life depended on this, right? So to be a fire keeper meant you were a very honored member of that tribe, but you had a huge responsibility. And the payment for not keeping that alive was quite dire. So, so yeah, fire is one of those things that it benefits us as long as we can keep it under control. And when I'm teaching candle magic, I'm always very adamant about, the safety with fire. Not because I'm paranoid about people burning their houses down. Of course, I don't want that to happen. But of all the energies you're working with, when you're working with air, when you're working with water, when you're working with earth, that's all great. It doesn't really get out of control. Fire is the one element that can get out of control, and it can eat your whole house and burn your whole house if you are not careful with it. So anytime you're working with the fire element, be very, very careful with it and be respectful of it, because it is definitely one of the most destructive elements we can work with if we don't respect what we're doing and the element we're working with. So that being said, let's go on to see what fire is all about. Because even when a fire does kind of seem to be getting out of control, like when there's fire, forest fires, for instance. Forest fires are actually quite good for the earth. I mean, no, you don't want to be burning the whole earth down or anything, but what it does is it helps to clear out the underbrush of the fire, and it helps to heat the earth so that dormant seeds that have been lying there, perhaps for quite some time, are suddenly awakened and alive and burst into life. So fire can be very good, and metaphorically speaking, when there's a forest fire within your soul or within your mind, within your body, it can burn away a lot of the underbrush that you don't need, because it's amazing what we hang on to for our own little petty reasons. And fire is that element that can just, it comes in like the goddess Kali and just is like, nope, it's gone. And we're suddenly like, oh my God, ah! And although it ends up like we feel like we're swinging without a net at first, but then it's like, oh, actually that was a good thing. I'm glad that's gone, because something else just sprang up and I didn't even know I was capable of doing this, and yet I was, right? So fire doesn't really question our strength. It just knows we have it, and it's not gentle like air. It's not subtle like air. Fire has no diplomacy. It's the friend that will tell you the dress looks like crap and doesn't mince words, kind of thing. So that's what fire kind of is. And of course, heat is the manifestation of that element. That's why, when I, for instance, do spells and work at my altar and whatnot, the room gets very heated, right? So, because I'm manifesting in that energy and that element. So the type of energy that fire is it's projective. So of course it shoots out, it's fire, it's flame, that sort of thing. The color is red because of course the flames are red. The embers, which are actually the more important part of the fire, are red, burning raw red embers. The rituals that you can perform that are fire associated are protection. Fire is a very protective element, and really good for any kind of protection spells. Often negative entities and demons and dark spirits and things cannot cross a line of fire. So if you want to protect your circle, that's part of the reason why we light candles in the four corners, because they're representative of that barrier of fire that we do not want negative energy to cross, and they cannot, especially if there's fire there. I know everybody's seen the circle of salt in movies and stuff like that, and salt is definitely very protective as well, but fire is definitely protective. Courage kind of rituals, sex rituals, energy rituals if you want more energy, strength, authority, any kind of banishing of negativity and darkness or evilness. Definitely fire is a very effective type of ritual, or bringing the fire element into that ritual. Ritual forms, of course, there's burning, because when you light a candle, you're burning the candle, or you're lighting sage to do some smudging, and that's part of the reason why smudging is so protective, because it's the sage, but it's also the burning of the sage. The sage itself needs to be burnt in order to be protective, or smoldering, because we often are using, we don't have the sage right on fire necessarily, we're using the smoke, which is very protective, or the smoldering of the sage leaves. Heating and friction. And so, you know, any kind of friction kind of magic, because you can make magic balls. And I use this as an example in a lot of my classes. You know, you create a magic ball, and then once you have the ball, you can put whatever you want in it. You can put love, is the most often thing I use. And I often say, if you blow a little love into your ball and you throw it into a room, that's a great place to put love that you want. You know, if there's an argument happening in a room, if there's children that are kind of out of control and being grumpy and whatnot, throw a few balls of love in there. And watch. I've had so many mothers go, oh my God, I'm so glad you taught me that technique, because it really does work. You can also take the ball. I mean, I don't have it here. I threw it over there. But once you do the friction, create the ball, you can also break it onto yourself if you want more love coming into your life, if you want to love yourself more and be more accepting of yourself, that sort of thing. You can throw it onto a lover, and he doesn't have to, or he or she doesn't have to be around. Like my husband's at work, so I could do a ball of love if maybe we had an argument, and toss it in his direction, and it'll hit him, and when he comes home he'll be a lot happier and say that I'm right. Because that's the way we win arguments around here. You just tell me I'm right and we're good. So herbs that are associated with fire, any plant that is stinging, thorny, or hot. So the plants of the fire element are very hard plants to work with. So things like stinging nettles, oh, I hate working with those things, but they are very effective in a lot of spells. Thistles, another hard one to work with. Cacti, if you want to work with cacti. Roses, the ones with thorns, they definitely are with the fire element, and they do have to be the roses with thorns, unfortunately. So the roses that you get from the florist are more, I think, the air element, right? Because the thorns have been taken off. Chili peppers, that sort of thing, those hot pepper kind of things. Coffee beans, because they're stimulating. So yeah, so having a cup of coffee can be a spell in of itself. So that's one of the more enjoyable ones. And seeds in general, because of course, again, like I mentioned in the forest fire, once the forest gets rid of the underbrush, it also heats the ground so that other dormant seeds can now spring up. And that's what we need, because the sun is made of fire, right? So that's what the plants need. Once you plant it into the darkness of Mother Earth, let it rest. It's the water and the heat of heating up the earth that helps it to spring into life. So fire can do that as well. I'm not recommending that you put fire into your gardens, but just know that it's heat that helps to get those plants to burst forward, kind of thing. Then we have the stones, so anything red or fiery for the stones, such as jasper, volcanic rock, or clear quartz crystal. Step down from the diamonds, but quartz crystal is a fire related crystal that you can work with if you're working with the fire element. The metals are gold and brass for fire. The musical instruments are guitar, the violin, any kind of stringed instruments, that sort of thing. The creatures that are associated with fire are the snake, interesting, the cricket, the ladybug, because remember the old poem, ladybug, ladybug, fly away home, your house is on fire and your children are alone. So the ladybug, the scorpion, the shark, and the panther are also related to fire. The mythical creatures that are fire related are salamanders, because salamanders are believed to be born of the fire. They are actually fire, and they come from the flames of the fire, and they jump from the fire and become these mythical creatures. And then, of course, the phoenix, rising from the ashes, right? So the phoenix is the yin to the dragon's yang. Phoenixes are always female, and they live for a very long time, about 1,000 years, and then they come back to the nest that they were born in, and they started as a little worm. It's kind of weird, but what the phoenix does is, when she's about to die, is the nest goes on fire, and then the next phoenix is born to live that next 1,000 years. So it's kind of interesting, and they're known as a resurrection. So from the flames, the burning flames, they are resurrected again and born again to live another 1,000 years. And there is a legend that if you can collect a phoenix tear, you can raise someone who has died, because they have that resurrection quality in that tear. But it's very hard to get a phoenix tear. And then we have the fire dragons. So those are some of the dragons that we think of who are flying in the air and breathing fire, blah, blah, blah. So there's the fire dragons. Again, I'll do a video just on the dragons if that's something you're interested in. Please leave me a comment or a thumbs up, and I'll see, hopefully there's some interest and I can do that up. The season for the fire element is summer. It's a time of heat. South, because it's the place of heat, because when you think of where do you want to go in the winter, I'm Canadian, so we think of where do you want to go in the winter, we want to go south. Just like the Canadian geese that live here, they go south. The time, of course, is noon, because high noon, of course, is the hottest time of the day, so that's why it's related to fire. So if you're doing a fire element spell, often high noon is the time that you can do that spell. And a lot of times for summer solstice, I know a lot of people tend to practice magic at night, but you can practice magic throughout the day, and do spells at different times of the day. And try, one of the exercises I do with some of my students is try doing spells at different times of the day, seeing what the energy is like at that time of the day. I have a whole series of that. The magical tool that you can work with is the knife or the athame. The athame is the fire tool on your altar, so it should be in the southern quarter of your altar. But it's your altar, so you put it wherever you want. But I'm just telling you the rules, bend as needed. So the point of life for the fire is youth. So this is where the young souls are. So remember I said the earth ones are kind of like the older souls. They're always acting older than they really are. They always have that stability. Well, the astrological signs that have the youthful side of things. So it's Aries, Leo, and Sagittarians. So they tend to be more risk takers. And it doesn't mean other signs don't take risks, but sometimes these guys will take bigger risks. They love spotlights. They love, they don't love heat necessarily, but they tend to play with fire a lot, both actually and metaphorically. They do, like I said, they'll take more risks. They have a youthful kind of outlook. So unlike the air, who has a curiosity, which is awesome, the Aries, Leo, and Sagittarians have a curiosity, but can sometimes get them into trouble kind of curiosity. So they'll sort of walk where angels fear to tread sometimes. They don't always think before they leap, kind of idea. And that's the sort of their youthful mentality. They're always like, let's go, new adventure? Yes, I'm up, kind of thing. And they do maintain that youthfulness about them. They have a youthful energy sort of always throughout their whole life, kind of thing. So sense for the fire element is sight. And the natural symbols of the fire element are flame, any heated object. So when you get your cauldron heated, although the cauldron is more of a water thing, it also can play into the fire part as well. And lava, but hopefully you won't be working with actual lava because that would not be good. The types of magic ruled, you can work with lava rocks though. So the types of magic ruled by fire are candle magic, storm and weather magic, also are under the fire element, time magic, and star magic, because of course stars are really big balls of fire. So star magic, and I'll get more into that in another video. Today we're just talking a brief introduction. We're an hour in to the elements, so I hope you're still with me. Anyways, water is the fourth and final element before we talk about Akasha. So water is the cleansing, healing, psychic, loving kind of element. Water gives us life, because again, like I said, 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So we need water in the same way that we need air. It's very mandatory for us to have that. It washes us down, it washes over us, it supports us. If we're fully immersed in water, we tend to float, so that's how it supports us. Of course, we're made of water. We're made of earth and water, basically. And we need air and fire to keep us alive, kind of thing. The energy of this element is vital to our well-being. If you've ever suffered from dehydration, and I have, you know how debilitating it can be. So you start to get really foggy, you can't make decisions, you don't know what's going on, you get confused easily when you're dehydrated, you become lethargic, you don't want to move, and then not necessarily in the final stages, but in one of the bigger stages is you start to get cramps, really bad cramps, and that is literally debilitating. You can't move. But also within water is the essence of love. It is through the embiotic fluids and the blood of our mother's womb that we first connect to the love on this plane. So that's water is literally love, and that's why it's so associated with love and psychic and healing kind of energies. And of course, love is hopefully the main reason why you're doing your magic, whether not necessarily love spells, but everything you're doing for it is in a healing, loving sort of way. And rainstorms, by the way, are the manifestation of water. So think about that the next time it rains. Be grateful, because it is literally liquid love and joy coming down from the heavens. So maybe you won't complain about the next rain that we get. Because I hear people complain, oh, it's raining today, I'm having a bad day. Why are you having a bad day when it's raining out? Liquid love is literally coming out of the clouds. Think about that when it snows too, because that's like basically solid love coming out of the heavens, right? So snow, rain, those are manifestations of the water element, which is love pouring down onto us and the earth and the heavens showing their love for Mother Earth. So keep that in mind the next time it rains or snows. Be thankful for the love that's coming. So, the aspects of water. The type of energy, it's a receptive, because of course, again, it's very much like Mother Earth. It's very receptive, it's loving, it's giving, that sort of thing. It's a receptive type of love. The color is blue, any kind of blue, of course, because of oceans and seas and rivers. You'll notice a lot of the mother goddesses, like for instance, I'm very dedicated to Mother Mary, the mother of Jesus. She's always dressed in blue, and you'll notice that a lot of the mother goddesses tend to have an association somehow with blue, whether it's a blue crown, blue stars over their head, blue, dress, clothing, that sort of thing. The rituals that are associated with the water element are purification, love, psychic awareness, dreams, sleep, peace, marriage, friendships, and connection to our higher selves. So ritual forms, the way you'd be working with water is any kind of elixirs, any kind of dilutions or mixtures, like mixtures of fluids and that sort of thing. Making moon water is very much, you're calling in that water element because you're working with the moon, which is also a water it's associated with water as well. Ritual baths that you might be doing, you're working with the water element. Any kind of washing away, whether it's literally with a bath or a shower, or whether you're washing away energy through smudging or whatever, you're bringing in some of that water element. Moon bathing, if you've ever done that, that's a lot of fun. And wishing wells or scrying or any kind of mirror magic, got that backwards. Mirror magic, it's all water based. You're bringing in that water element for those kind of magic practices. So herbs, we're looking at seaweed and water lilies, very obvious ones. But in your kitchen, you also have some water-based herbs and plants and things like lettuce. Lettuce is very water-based. Celery, the most water-based plant you can eat. You actually burn more calories digesting the celery than you consume by eating the celery. So you get a negative calorie count there, which is awesome. So celery is always a good thing. Watermelon, of course, we all know how delicious and watery watermelon is, how refreshing it is. Succulents, if you have succulents in your home gardens. Roses and gardenias are also water-based flowers, if you're looking for flowers. And a lot of love spells are water. You're working with love, with water element, because of course water is love, and roses are very much associated with love spells. One of the most powerful flowers you can use in love spells. So when you bring in the water element and the roses, you're looking at a pretty good spell there. So stones that are associated with the water element are amethyst, because amethyst is really a very psychic stone. It helps to amplify any psychic awareness or abilities. So I have a huge chunk of amethyst that I keep on my table when I'm doing tarot readings or when I'm doing any kind of palm readings or anything like that, the I Ching. I always have that piece of amethyst at my office. Aquamarine, moonstone, opal, almost any blue stones, such as blue tourmaline, for instance, any kind of blue stones, very much you're working with the water element in that stone. I forgot to go over the symbols, so I'll do that in a minute here. I just remembered that. I've done only the earth ones. So the metals associated with water are mercury or quicksilver, and actual silver as well, and copper. The musical instruments are cymbals, and you don't have to use the big bashing cymbals. You can use the little finger ones or the little tingy ones that they use for meditation, or like the finger ones they use in belly dance and things like that. Bells, any kind of bells. Chimes, as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the air musical instruments, so chimes and gongs as well. Gongs are also air associated, so you can use both, and if you're combining those two elements into something, you can use chimes and gongs as sort of a combination kind of instrument if you want to incorporate music into your your spell or your practice of magic. The creatures associated with water. I thought the first one was kind of interesting. Cats. But I think it's not because cats like water, because normally they don't. It's because of their perceived psychic abilities, because they're able to see things that we don't always see. So I see why cats are included, even though they're not a water animal. But the other ones make more sense. So there's frogs, turtles, dolphins, whales, otters, seals, most fish and shellfish, seahorses. Some of the more mythical creatures, of course, are mermaids. It's probably the first one that came to mind. And hippocampuses. So hippocampuses are kind of like seahorses, but they're actually a horse with a fish's tail. And hippocampuses are the ones that were the horses for Poseidon, who is the god of the sea and the ocean. They pulled his chariot. So yes, I know a lot about magical creatures when I learned my fairyology. And water dragons. There are water dragons as well, and they can look very fish-like as well too. So the season associated with water is autumn, which is the time of harvest, because water, when you have water, especially running water, it's, you have an abundance of life, right? We don't always understand how lucky we are in North America that we can turn on a tap and have water to water ourselves, to cook with, to bathe with, all at a snap of a finger. It's all here on demand to water our house plants, to water our gardens. We're not having to drag water. We're not having to find good water. We don't have to walk for miles for water. So water definitely is an autumn-based thing, because it is all about, once you have stabilized water, you have abundance, right? West, because it's the place of the setting sun, because it's the ending of things and the new beginnings coming in. The time is dusk or sunset. The magical tools that are associated with water are the cup and the cauldron, so your chalice or your cauldron. Cauldron is sort of one of those, it fits almost everywhere, because it can also be earth-based. It can also be a fire thing if you're going to heat things in it, but it is also a container for water, so you can put water in there as well as your chalice. So it can go in any of those directions, the cauldron, but the chalice definitely is in the west side. The point in life is maturity, not the crone stage, more the mother stage, but maybe the older mother, not the new mother. So the astrological signs that are associated with this are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And Cancers are known as the mothers of these zodiac signs. They're very nurturing for the most part. So it's very fitting that the point in life is maturity. And because water is often associated with emotions and things like that, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are some of the most emotional signs. And I don't mean that in a negative way, not like out of control emotion, but out sort of more their waters run deep is what you'll say often about a Cancer, a Scorpio, and a Pisces. They love deeply, they commit deeply, they again, because water is associated with psychic awareness, they tend to be more in touch with that, or at least more curious about it and want to explore that. So definitely this is very fitting for Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. It's the maturity level, and the water element is associated with them. I mean, Pisces are the fish, right? So of course they're water element. So sense is taste. Who doesn't like a good, nice, fresh glass of water? Natural symbols are shells, containers of water, of course. Types of magic ruled by water are sea magic, ice magic, snow magic, sometimes mirror magic as well. This is water, so mirror magic, definitely. Fog magic, and river magic. So all those are associated with the water element. So now we're on to Akasha. So Akasha is all the elements emerge from Akasha. It's the immutable and unchangeable source of energy, or the changeless source, I guess. This is the realm of potentiality, of promise, of paths not yet taken, of unformed galaxies, it's the universe. It's an aspect of the Divine Mother, basically. It's present within us in the divine form. Some say it's sort of our reason for our spark of life, our soul, our essence. That's what Akasha is within us. It's unbeingness, though. It's all and nothing at the same time. It's energy that stretches and reaches across and through the universe, and yet it has not achieved any sort of form or substance. It's both chaos and order at the same time. And it's because it contains complete balanced energy that the forms come out in the elements, in earth, air, water, and fire. So the aspects of Akasha is the unknowable. She's the void. She's not really a she. She's both he and she at the same time. Again, both projective and receptive at the same time. The colors associated with her or with Akasha are generally black and purple. The types of rituals are very spiritual in nature. So Akasha tends to be more of a high magic, ritual magic, not necessarily a low magic. Not that one's better than the other, but high magic tends to be very ritualized. It tends to be more spiritually based. You're not setting intentions for new jobs and new homes or anything like that. The ritual forms are all of them, but none at the same time. And you'll find that with a lot of the aspects of Akasha. Herbs, none of them, but all of them. Stones, none, but all. The musical instruments, none and all at the same time. The creatures, all of them, but none. Specifically, there is a chaos dragon, though. So I can talk about that later. Seasons, all of them and none of them. The direction of Akasha, it's very interesting because the direction is not center. It's above and below. As above, so below. It's within and without. It is of no direction or dimension at all, while still going in all directions at the same time. It is the 1,000-pointed star, or the lotus of the 1,000 petals. And the lotus of the 1,000 petals, if you know your chakras, is the crown chakra, the one that connects us to our higher selves, to the universe, to source, to Akasha. The time is eternal starlight. The magical tool is all of them and none. The point in life is soulness, or preconception. Soulness. The sense is all of the senses, but none of them at the same time. Again, same thing with the astrological signs. All of them, but none. There are no symbols for Akasha. The types of magic ruled are all types of magic, in particular, spiritual and transformational. So that's what Akasha is. Now for the symbols, I've got the water symbol. So the water symbol is a circle with a line across it. It is also the triangle upside down. Now I'm going to show you a fire symbol before I show you the third water symbol. The fire symbol is the triangle right side up. So how I remember this is one of the flames reaching up, right? Fire symbol. And the water symbol is the cup that you pour the water into that helps to control the fire. So that's how I remember these two signs and which ones they are. Now the other water symbol, because each symbol has 3. Here's the other water symbol. Very easy. Waves. 2 waves. That's the other water symbol. So like I said, you can use these two when you're dressing your candles and whatnot. So another fire symbol is the upside down or the right side up triangle with a circle around it. So it's fire controlled. And then the other fire symbol is a flame. That's generally what it looks like, my best interpretation there. Then we're into the air symbol. So like the earth symbol was upside down triangle with a line through it, the air symbol, because it goes up, is with a line through it. That's how I remember that. And then we've got the circle with a dot in it. That's the other air symbol. And then the last air symbol is an arrow kind of flying off to the side. So those are some of the symbols that you can use in your Book of Shadows, to use on your candles, to use on yourself, whatever you might need to use them for. There's many ways that you can use those symbols. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a long one, and it is just a brief introduction. Let me know if you want me to do other videos on each of the elements, or on the dragons, of course. And I will be doing some more videos later. So thank you for joining me here. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. And I hope you enjoyed this one. Please give me a thumbs up if you did. And you can find me here, Lady Rose at Goddess Garage. Thank you so much. Bye.